Well, welcome to the Grow Your Camp podcast. I'm Carl,
And I'm Mark.
and we're here to share stories and systems to help you grow your camp because you can't minister to empty beds. Today's episode features a conversation between Mark and I about why most camp websites underperform when it comes to guest group retreat bookings and what to change to fix it. But before we dive into the interview, here's a quick marketing tip from Mark.
Thanks, Carl. Hey, listen, today's marketing tip is what I call the deer. These days, customer reviews can kill your business or it can actually inspire growth. And I think it's important to adopt to the way people are reviewing. Otherwise, you're going to become absolutely obsolete with the changing technologies. Not long ago, I was interviewed by Entrepreneur Magazine about reviews. My name had come up because I had become a top contributor on TripAdvisor, and I began to study the power of reviews. And folks, I want to give you 3 tips on what to do with reviews and how to respond to negative reviews. So number 1, are you asking for reviews? Reviews matter. Our target on a 5-point scale on Google is 4.8. Want to guess what happens if you go below 3.9? You will miss percent of consumers. Think about the last thing you bought. You looked at the review. If it was 4.5, you were like, okay, that's great. So number 1, be sure you're asking for reviews. I have camp leaders that I coach, and I suggest this technique at Saturday lunch with a QR code on the table. Say, hey, how many people are having a great time? Great. Would you mind giving us a review? And just click on that QR code, or have the QR code or the direct link that you can give to group leaders so that they can review you. Ask. We have not because we ask not. Number 2, you need to manage it. You need to respond to reviews within 24 hours, positive or negative, because that kind of gives your listing on Google Business Listing some juice. And number 3, respond in a way that's personal. So if it says Mark, say, hey, Mark, thanks for your review. I appreciate it. You really encouraged our food service staff with your kind comments about our food. Hope to see you again. That kind of positive review. But when there's a negative review, when there's somebody that says, you guys suck, this was the worst experience of my life. It usually isn't that bad. It's something like, hey, the hot food was cold or the cold food was hot. Here's the thing. You want to respond to that negative review, but remember, you're not responding to the reviewer directly. You're actually writing for the thousands of people who will read that negative review to see how you treat angry people. And here's my suggestion on the 4 parts to a negative review response. Number 1, just thank them. 2, own it. 3, apologize. And 4, offer to make it right. In other words, that negative review comes in and they complained about the food. You say, hey, thank you for taking the time to let us know how we can get better. It sounds like we really missed it during your experience, and I am personally sorry for that, and I'd like to offer to make it right. And then you put a call to action in there on how they can reach you. But simply thanking, owning, apologizing, I like to say it this way: seasoned sailors are not made on calm seas. So the deer have guns essentially means that the consumer shift in the digital revolution has given consumers the guns, the power, the influence to change traditional company marketing efforts. And you can literally, by 1 star increase, boost your revenues by 35%. So remember, when the deer have guns, be gracious, respond, ask for more. And I almost forgot this other thing. I had a camp who fired somebody, and that kid went off and got all his friends and wrote all these terrible reviews. And one of the things that you may have to do is to go to Google and say, hey, help us, get rid of these reviews. But bottom line is, thank people, own it, apologize, make things right, and make sure you're asking for more reviews. It'll boost your Google juice, and it could increase your revenues. That's today's marketing tip. Okay, Carl, you ready? It's your turn to get on the hot seat.
Yep, I'm ready.
All right, we're going to be talking about something that most camps feel. Carl and I visit sectional, 3CA sectionals, ACA events, denominational events, the National Christian Camp and Conference Association. And almost every single person we talk to realizes they have some sort of challenges, but they don't always know how to fix it. And if you're like most camps, your retreat program or your guest groups is a major driver in revenue. And you likely have strong rebooking rates. We need to target between 60 and 80% rebooking. Otherwise, we have a bigger problem than just marketing. And a lot of new groups will come through word of mouth. We know that. But outside of that, inquiries often can feel inconsistent, and it's hard to grow beyond your existing network. So today we're going to dig into one of the most common and most overlooked reasons that camps like yours are missing the opportunity through your website to capture more leads and close more sales. So Carl, before we get into that strategy side, let's talk a little bit about your own story and share with us something about camp that has impacted your life personally.
Sure. Yeah, camp has had a pretty significant impact on my life. My story's a little different than some of the other ones that tend to kind of dip into childhood experiences. Mine actually happened about 15 years ago. Um, Before getting into camp marketing, I spent close to 20 years in corporate America. And toward the end of that season, I was just burnout.
Yeah.
On paper, things looked great, but internally, I felt pretty empty. And my wife, Amy, and I prayed about it and felt God was leading us to step away from that job and take basically a hiatus. We spent 6 months overseas doing some missions training and doing some overseas work. And when we came back, frankly, I had no idea what I was going to do next. And kind of a funny God coincidence on our when we got back on the airplane, a friend of ours, a family friend of ours, picked us up and on the way back offered me a job, a short-term job, just to kind of help us while we were figuring things out. And he worked at a local Christian retreat center. And long story short, that job turned into a long-term role, or a multi-year role. I got involved in sales and marketing. And that's actually how I got into marketing and ended up starting Improve and Grow and helping out camps. But the camp experience part of that story is what really impacted me about working at that camp wasn't just the work, it was the environment. I got a front row seat to what it looked like to steward a ministry and business at the same time, to learn what it was like to learn that people come before profits, because I certainly didn't learn that lesson in my experience in corporate America. And that another important one is that growth isn't something you have to force. It's something you pursue as God leads. And I experienced what it was like to work alongside people who aren't just coworkers, but were close friends, and many of them remain friends to this day. And anyway, so that season reshaped how I think about work, leadership, success. And like I said, it ultimately led me into marketing and starting Improve and Grow. So now I get to help camps all over the place using those skills, but also doing it in a way that aligns with what I believe matters most.
You know, Carl, as I hear you tell that story, it reminds me of a quote that has really guided me over the years, and that is perhaps some detours are not actually detours. Perhaps they're actually the
Mm.
path. And that
Yeah,
sounds
that's
very
good.
much like the you were going this way and then you found this and you realize, holy cow, this is amazing. So when we talk about camp websites,
Yep.
and I think it's important for me to make a clear distinction here. We know that most camps serve individual campers, summer camp, mother daughter, men's conferences, winter camp. You're running your own program. That's often the heartbeat to experience the mission of a camp. The other is groups, the guest groups, retreat groups. And what I really am curious, Carl, is you've looked over the landscape of many camp websites. Typically, you see how they present summer camps. What I want to know is what's the difference between the way camps are presenting their own program versus guest groups or retreats.
Yeah, Mark, I would echo kind of what you said. Like most camps offer, what their main ministry is summer camp or some other sort of program that they offer. And typically they're marketing to individual consumers that are registering in for those programs. But then for the rest of the year, they're renting out their facilities to other groups. And I kind of call that the camp ministry or programs versus retreats or guest group rentals. And, what is really interesting is when you look at their websites, a lot of times you wouldn't know they do anything other than their programs, or it's hard to tell. So, like if we're talking about a summer camp or a camp that offer where their main program is summer camps, that's usually front and center. The homepage has pictures of kids having fun. There's pages for every camp program. There's FAQs. There's policies. There's a way to register for camp. And when it comes to retreats, I mean, I was just looking at a website the other day where literally there was just a phrase buried in the middle of the homepage that said facility rentals. And when you clicked on it, it brought up a short PDF. And that was the extent of their message around retreat rentals. But yet, that same organization, like 75% of their annual revenue came from guest group rentals.
What's that phrase you
So, yeah.
use about screaming one thing and whispering another?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I said that, a lot of camp websites scream camp, but whisper retreats. Yeah,
Yeah. So,
yeah.
it is by far our digital landscape, our real estate that folks land on when they find us. Is it easy for them to find how to book their own guest group retreat? So, for you, Carl, how does that compare to what you actually see behind the scenes in terms of revenue and capacity?
Yeah, sure. Well, like, again, I'll keep using the camp that has a summer camp ministry as their kind of primary focus. Generally, when we're meeting with camps, what we find is their summer camp program is already pretty much full. Like they're getting campers and filling 80 to 90% of their available spots. And that ministry is happening somewhere between 4 to 8 weeks out of the year over the summer period. But then the other, 9 to 10 months of the year, they're sitting at 20 to 40% occupied, meaning they've got 60 to 80% open capacity on the weekends or even midweek, where they could be offering group retreat rentals. So, and what's interesting is even though they might only be 20 to 40% full, the revenue from those guest group rentals is typically more than double the revenue of their summer camp ministry, which if you do all the math there, you don't have to do it. But if you do the math there, not only is that their biggest revenue driver, but it also then is their biggest way to continue to grow revenue because, like I said, they're already pretty full on the camp side. So in my mind, it creates this, the biggest opportunity seems to be getting more guest group rentals, but the website doesn't really reflect that guest group rentals is a priority for the organization. And I see that pattern, I'd say probably 8 out of 10 camp websites I look at.
Yeah, I know as we've built websites, it's become really apparent, come to our program or build your own program, giving the option. But what I found is there often is a disconnect with the leadership of a camp who look at guest groups as a way of supporting their mission and program rather than it also being a part of their mission and program. And so that also changes the attitude when folks are talking about their camp. And I like to
Yeah.
say, I remember one time I was having this big discussion at one of our camps, and the guest groups had a green wristband, and the program campers had an orange wristband, and that meant the orange got better treatment. It was how it was
Mm.
taught that these are our programs, these are our priorities, these are, more important than the green wristbands. And I stood up and I said, I have a dream that someday at this camp, we will not be judged by the color of our wristband, but the fact that we are here. Oh man, it was yeah. It is hard sometimes just to prioritize what should come first. When a retreat organizer, Carl, lands on a camp's website, what are they trying to figure out, and what's usually missing?
Yeah. Yeah, the reality is they're trying to answer just some very practical questions, and they're very similar to the questions that you might ask if you're searching for a new product or a new service. It's, is this venue a good fit for our group? So I get to the website, I do some kind of search, Christian Retreat Center near me, and the first thing I'm looking for is, does this look like an organization that I would want to be associated with? Does this venue look like a place that would be comfortable for my group? And then, what's the experience going to be like? Is my group going to enjoy being here? Are we going to feel at peace and feel connected, or are we going to feel busy and distracted? What facilities are available? Certain groups have different levels of tolerance for the typical bunk situation that's associated with some camps. Some people don't want to be in a rustic cabin. Some people absolutely want to be in a rustic cabin, and that's the experience they're looking for. When someone's coming for a guest group, they want to meet, they want to congregate as a group. So are we going to get our own dedicated meeting space, or do we just have to kind of like make our own places to congregate? And then, when they get beyond those practicals, then it becomes down to, well, how does the booking process work? Like, how would I get started? Do I have to pay for it up front? Do I pay for it later? How does that whole process work? What would it cost to have a retreat at your facility? And frankly, most websites don't answer those questions, or they don't do it in a clear way. They make people work too hard to find those answers.
I like the phrase that Donald Miller uses in StoryBrand. You have 3
Mm,
seconds to pass the grunt test. "Ugh," you know, "Do you have what I need? Can I get to it? And how hard is it to buy?"
mm,
And, one of the things you and I both have been helping camps do is simplify it, visually communicate. Some people are just price point. Some people are luxury or rustic, but doing it often just gets missed. Like you mentioned, somebody just has a little PDF that you click on. That's not going to help. Um, so, so when you step back and look at the camps that do this really well, this idea of making it easy to find guest group retreat info, what's the structure or approach that actually leads to more inquiries?
yeah. Well, let me start by just laying it out in kind of a simple fashion, and then we'll unpack it in a little more detail. I mean, when you step back, it's really a pretty simple formula. First, you need to make it clear that you offer retreat rentals. It should be in your primary navigation. It should be highlighted on your homepage, and there should be a clear section of the website that's dedicated to just group retreats. Um, which actually helps you also with communicating more clearly, because then you can use pictures and videos and things that are relevant to camps on the camp section, and you can use pictures and words and videos that are relevant to retreats in the retreat section. The second one is, give a strong overview of how you help groups have a great retreat. The reality is, you're not selling facilities. You're not selling facilities and food and activities. You're selling an experience. And a group retreat organizer, if they've held a retreat before, they're looking at switching venues. There's a lot on the line there, because you have groups that love the old venue, you have groups that hated the old venue, and now you need to have a good experience at this one. And if you're working with a new retreat organizer, they have a lot of personal risk associated with that. So all I'm trying to say here is, you need to sell the experience, not, the facilities and all those other details matter, but it's the experience that matters first. And then third, you need to break down the details that answer their key questions, which we talked about in the earlier discussion. And then the fourth easy point is, just make it really easy to inquire. A simple form with some basic questions about your event, that's with clear calls to action all throughout the retreat section of the website, make it really easy for someone to decide, if they're ready, okay, here's what I need to do next. When those four pieces are in place, making it clear that you offer retreats, giving a strong overview of how you help people have a great retreat, breaking down all the key details, and then making it really easy to inquire, you get those four pieces right, and inquiries will typically double or triple from what you're experiencing today.
And the call to action or the CTA on that landing page for retreats is often to fill out a form, and that form
Hmm.
goes somewhere. For us, we like it to go into a CRM, and the salesperson's alerted, and they are responding within 10 to 15 minutes to a qualified lead. And oftentimes it goes into a queue where it might get called back or responded back. So it's one thing to set up the funnel where people are coming in and asking questions of us. It's another to respond, which we talk on our first episode of the Grow Your Camp podcast. If you want to go back and hear that. All right, Carl, let's break it down. What are the core pages or pieces of content that need to be in place to support this structure?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm going to actually share an example of a website that we worked on recently, and I'll reference some things as we talk about this. But first and foremost, you need to have a main group retreats page. In this particular case, this camp actually only does guest group rentals. They don't do their own programs, but some of the groups that come are holding their own camps. So they call their guest group rentals camps and retreats. But for this main page, we want to make it clear what kind of experience you offer. We want to make it clear that what kind of amenities or accommodations or facilities you have. You want to make it clear what kind of groups you're positioned to serve. You want to give people, if you can, a way to even experience the camp virtually. In this case, they've got a really cool video that does a tour of the different places of the camp with some interactivity there. Then you want to kind of speak directly to the retreat organizer and talk about how the process of booking a retreat works. Um, and this is a great place to build in some social proofs. Show them what guests who have stayed there before say about their experience. That's another way of communicating what kind of experience people have. Um, and then the last would be just to address some kind of key questions that people might ask. So, this might feel like a long page, but it's really fairly simple. But it's kind of just giving you that overall overview of, yes, we do retreats. Here's the kind of groups we serve. Here's how we serve them. Here's what other people have to say. And if you're interested in moving forward, here's the simple steps to get started and a button to click to submit an inquiry. So that is first and foremost the most important thing that I would say you could have. After that, you want to start to address those key detail questions like what kind of facilities are.
Hold on, Carl. Hold on.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, folks, if you're listening to the podcast and not watching it, we also have a visualization. So we are showing screens, but many of you won't be driving or working out and listening to it. This camp name is called, did you mention that at the top?
No, it's Cross Oak Camp. Their website is crossoakcamp.com.
And I think it's
Yeah.
good to go to that one because Carl's team built this.
Yeah. So once someone knows, okay, hey, you do group retreats, then the detailed questions start to happen. Like, how does lodging work? How does dining work? Do you have meeting rooms? What kind of recreational opportunities do you have for my group? And some groups don't want to just not laze around, but just relax. They want to actually do some activities. They want to go zip lining. They want to, they want to go fishing, or they want to go hiking, or they want to do some sort of facilitated activity. So addressing those key questions, those 5 groups are kind of the core main types of facility or accommodation type things that people are going to ask. And one of the reasons I like this site is because we put that information front and center, and each one of those areas has its own page. So if the thing you're really interested in is, hey, do we have to bring our own meals? Do we have to bring in our own catering, or do you provide it? And if you provide it, what kind of meal experience is there? This site does a great job of telling you that information. If your question or concern is really, hey, the last venue we were at really didn't have a meeting room that accommodated our group, or the kind of audiovisual equipment that we really needed to have the kind of experience we wanted to have, the meeting rooms page is a great way to talk about that. Like, what kind of experience is there? Show real examples of your meeting rooms, show lots of pictures so they can get a sense for the space. And one thing you can do really good that I like about this one is actually showing people in the space, because it helps the person reading the website envision their group in your space, as opposed to just showing. What I see on a lot of websites is just pictures of empty rooms.
Yeah.
Um, Same thing with activities. Like I said, people want to know what kind of activities they can do. So making it clear what kind of recreational areas are available that are usually included with a retreat rental, as well as what kind of activities are available, which are usually, some sort of add-on expense, but having a good understanding of what kinds of other activities might be available if that's an option for your
Dude,
group.
I
So,
haven't gone this deep on this website. You guys did great with visuals, headlines, benefits,
hmm,
uh, ease of navigation, explanation of add-on pricing. Like, this is such a good website.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at some point in this experience, what we want is for people to be motivated to say, "Hey, you know what? I think this might be the kind of venue that might would be good for my group. How do I get started?" On each of these pages, there's a section that talks about the process, and the first step is sending an inquiry. And whenever we talk about that, there's a button there. So when you click on that request a quote button, that brings you to a very simple and easy to fill out form. It's got all the contact type stuff that you would expect to be there: first name, last name, name of organization, email, phone number. But it also asks some key questions about your event. What's the start date? What's the end date? Are your dates flexible or are they fixed? What kind of, what size of group are you going to have? And then a comment box where people can answer questions about or provide a little bit more detail. This particular form's a little simpler. I've seen some camps will even ask things like how many nights, how many meals, or what type of group. Is this a men's group, a women's group, a youth group? And I encourage our camp directors to just strike a balance. Ask the questions that will help you get the information you need, but don't ask so many questions that I need an hour to fill out the form and I'm going to get tired and just leave. And I want to suggest there's a twofold reason for having people fill out those details. One, for the camp, is to get the kind of qualifying information they need to know whether or not to even respond to this inquiry and how to respond to it, right? Like that's the import there. But even for the person on the front end of that form, it makes them feel like this is a legitimate thing. They're providing some information, they're giving you details that feels a lot more professional and structured than just name, address, and tell us about your event,
Yeah.
right? And then once this form gets filled out, there's typically two things that happen. One is the person who filled out the form gets an email documenting what they submitted, which is nice because they know they submitted it then and they have something in their inbox to track it. That same email goes to the retreat center. We also put it in their CRM. And then we also send a signal back to their Google Analytics so that we know that form was filled out, which can then trace back where did that person come from? Oh, they came from a Google search or they came from a Facebook post, which can help you figure out what parts of your website and what parts of your marketing are really working well.
Such good stuff. Okay, you and I have a great disagreement. This is where the universe splits. You like to
Okay.
put the price up there. Tell us why and show us on this website. I don't
Yeah.
like to put the
So,
price up there, and I'll explain why as well.
okay. Yeah, let me make my case and then you're welcome to make your counter.
Yeah, let's
So
go. Let's go.
so yeah. Um I am a big subscriber of Marcus Sheridan. He's the author of a book called They Ask You Answer. And his philosophy is if you really want to make more relationships with clients and you want to build authority and trust in your industry, just answer clearly the questions, the top questions that people answer. And when a retreat organizer is on your website and they are considering your venue, there are two main questions that they are asked. Well, three questions in their mind. Is this a venue my group could be comfortable at? And then if the answer is yes, are they available for the dates that I need? And what is it going to cost? Now, the availability is a tricky question. I've only worked with one retreat center that's actually been able to figure out a way to show dynamic availability on their website for group retreat rentals. So that's a technical problem, but the pricing issue is usually a psychological problem. And we argue that it is better to show the price, or at least to show how pricing works, and to show some price ranges, because that helps somebody put you in the right category of either I think I can afford for my group to come to this venue, or I don't think I can afford my group to come to this venue. And the typical argument that we get, I'm interested in the one that you'll make here soon, but the typical argument we get is we don't want to lose the opportunity because we might be able to make a pricing concession, or maybe they'll misunderstand our pricing. And what I want to tell you is it's a two-way street. I'll actually give you a quick case study to make my point. We worked with an organization about 10 years ago. They did not have pricing on their website. Most retreat centers that I visited at that time did not have pricing on their website. And I made the argument that that could be a differentiating point for that organization. At that time, they were actually getting steady retreat inquiry volume, but their single biggest reason for losing retreats, for losing quotes, was because the price was too high. What was happening is this was what I'm going to call a mid-tier retreat center, where, they have decent lodging, they have decent meals, so their pricing reflected that. Some of the groups that were coming to inquire loved what they saw. They loved the website, loved the activities, loved the pictures, loved the experience. And because there was no pricing information, they're like, sure, we would love to go to this place. This looks better than the camp that we're staying at now. And then when they would get the price quote, they'd get sticker shock because the prices were maybe 30, 40, 50% higher than what they were used to, because they were typically going to a smaller, more rustic camp. After we put the prices on the website, availability became the number one reason that people stopped booking. The other thing was that camp had actually increased their prices over that time. But they had a discounting method that they used to use. They actually stopped having to discount. And I started asking them, like, what was going on with that. I noticed that they were not only getting more inquiries, but in the reports they were sharing with me, I was seeing that their close rates were getting higher. And the answers were they started to get inquiries from groups that they were never getting inquiries for. In this case, it was a retreat center in PA, and they were getting inquiries from New Jersey and groups from New Jersey and New York who were looking at the pricing on their website, comparing that to the higher prices that they were used to paying in their home states, and saying it's worth the extra hour drive to go to this great property in PA because their pricing is great. Meanwhile, that pricing was actually higher than what they used to use previously, and they weren't having to make discounts. So the end result was they got more bookings at a higher rate and stopped getting having to deal with inquiries that were never going to move forward anyway because of a price disparity.
Man, you give a very strong argument for showing the prices, and I will say you're tipping me. You're definitely, like, you use some good data, and you make a logical argument that people who are willing to pay a higher price want to see it and so forth. Show us on this website where the pricing is, and then I'll tell you
Yeah,
why
and this
I don't put prices on.
yeah,
Okay.
this one is actually a decent example too, because actually, there's another site I can show you that kind of strikes a balance of not being too detailed.
That's okay.
But yeah, this is their pricing page here. Yeah.
Okay, so you just basically put the simple single night, double, triple, how much it is. So okay, all right. So here's my rationale for not putting prices on. Retreat sales is very relational. It's less transactional. It's less click, buy, get. It's click, inquire, and then begin a relationship. I don't mind putting a range, like a range of a price, 200 to 270. But it also creates complications when you do demand-based pricing. So some dates, March, is going to be less expensive than mid-October weekend. And so then when you start listing prices, then you're going to be showing prices that could be different. You could have 23 different prices based on when the retreat is being held. And demand-based pricing is simply, if there's more demand, the price is higher. When there's less demand, the price is lower. So anyway, I kind of feel like I want to test putting the price up on one of our camp clients with Inspiring Growth just to see if we can verify your data.
Yeah. Well, rather than argue the point with you, let me show you an example of how another way that you might be able to address the problem that you highlighted. This particular website, this is
Oh, look at you.
refreshingmountain.com. Um, so their pricing is so one of the pushbacks I get from camp directors on not showing their pricing is it's very complicated.
Yeah.
It depends how many people. It depends what combination of lodging. It depends how many nights, how many meals. Are they adding activities or not? And my point is I get it. I know that it's that complex. I offer custom marketing services. We tailor our quote to the client situation as well. But the client's never going to reach out if they don't at least have some ballpark estimate of or some clients won't reach out if they just don't have any kind of even gauge. And so the way they've tackled that complexity problem is you first state what size is your group within a range, what type of package are you looking for, and what time of year are you looking for that. And they also break down their pricing by lodging type, which is kind of the big driver of
Yeah.
what affects the price.
Yeah.
And then the other cool thing that they do is they translate their price to per person
Yep.
pricing.
That's good.
Because a retreat organizer, they might have a budget for the event, but in most cases, they are expecting to cover most or all of that event with the registrations they get from their members. And one of the things that a lot of camps do is they make it easy to get a total price, but they make it really hard to figure out, well, what should I charge my members?
Yeah, I totally.
And no church wants to be left holding the bag. And so they've solved another key problem there by translating their pricing into per person pricing.
Okay, so on this
So
example,
yeah,
if in this example at Refreshing Mountain, they could choose the date September, that price may change. Okay. All right. Well, you, Carl, continue to educate and amaze me with the things you've tested and tried. I just love that, which is why, really, guys, gals, listeners, camp leaders, Carl and I are doing this together. We both run independent agencies, Inspiring Growth and Improve and Grow, which incidentally both have the same initials, IG, not to be confused with that platform that Facebook owns. So, man, we are covering so much ground. It's so practical. Um, w- I I feel like we're running out of time. I know we have couple more thoughts. When a camp implements this kind of website design, what kind of impact have you seen, and where should someone start if they realize they're missing this?
yeah, great question. I mean, first, I'll just say every retreat center is different, and some details matter more or less depending on how you're set up. But follow those four main principles. Make it clear you offer retreats. Make your main group retreat page really good and robust. Provide the details that you have found are necessary to answer key questions when you're on the phones, and then make it really easy to inquire. So, some websites need 20 pages to do that. Some need 5 pages to do that. So it's not about page count. But when you really follow those 4 steps, we typically see a pretty substantial increase. Just as an example, we recently just launched a new website for a camp in Ohio, and we launched that at the end of Thanksgiving or right after Thanksgiving last year in 2025. And as of today, middle of March 2026, they've already secured enough bookings for this calendar year that they already know they're going to have 3 times more bookings than they had last calendar year. And they still have 9 months to go in the year, right? So, uh, and then a longer term example, we work with a conference center in New Jersey. So we've been working them for 10 years now. But in year one, the year before that, they had gotten 240 inquiries for retreats from their website. In year one, after we implemented these core changes on their website, they got over 430 retreat
Oh,
inquiries from their website. And then I mentioned we've been working with them for 10 years. So we and they have continually been working at growing their reach, improving their website. And last year they had over 1,000 inquiries from their website for retreats.
so good.
So, and I want to be clear. I actually had this conversation with a camp in Michigan last week. Fixing your website is super, super important, but you also have to bring the right people to your website. So I do just want to clarify, if you've already got a lot of the right people coming to your website, but they're not filling out the inquiry form as often as you think they should be, website improvement may be all you need to do. But most camps we work with have two problems. Their website isn't set up for success, but they also don't have enough of the right people coming to their website. So I do want to point out that some of these results I'm sharing, the big driver was the improvement to the website, but a very close secondary driver was driving more of the right people to the website.
I know that you have a special offer for our listeners, and I'd love for you to tell a little bit about if somebody wants to go deeper or or get an audit or figure out how to make these things work. Talk about the improve and grow growth action plan and the offer that you're doing for our listeners.
Yeah, sure. So we love to partner with camps and help them on a long-term basis. But sometimes camps just aren't sure what to do next. They don't know what they need. Do they need a website redesign? Do they need some Google advertising? Do they need to do SEO? Would their money be better spent on social media? Or is any of that even a good investment? Should they just continue to rely on word of mouth referrals and just kind of live with what they have and make the best out of it? And they're that's probably never the right answer, but the exact right answer for every camp looks a little different based on their goals and their situation. So we have found that it's better to, before you just jump right into making changes to your website or throwing a bunch of dollars at marketing, it's better to step back and put a well-informed strategy in place. And we find though a lot of camps, they're so, their primary focus is ministry and secondarily running the camp, and then things like marketing and sales kind of get taken care of when they can or out of necessity. So we bring that expertise and we've packaged that together into a 2-week project that we call a growth action plan, where we do a deep dive on what your camp programs are, where you're looking to grow, what kind of people you're trying to reach. And then we go out and do the market research. We do the competitive analysis. And yeah, we do the deep dive on your website and figure out what problems need to be fixed, what things need to be added, what things need to be enhanced or improved. And then we bring all that back to you and present it to you in a very clear plan, step by step, of exactly what you need to do to get the kind of retreat inquiry flow you're looking for, or the kind of improvement in camp registrations, or whatever goal it is that your camp is trying to go after. And so the special offer you talked about. So for that growth action plan, one of the things we're doing right now is running a promotion where if you sign up for that growth action plan, there's a cost for that. And that cost depends on a couple of different things, but it starts at $3,000, which, that's not a small expense. But one of the things we're doing for camps right now is if you go forward with that plan and then you decide to implement it, we'll take 50% of that investment and put that towards your marketing budget to making that leap into actually fixing those problems a little bit easier.
It's great, and it's well worth it. It's like going to the doctor. You pay for a doctor's visit, they diagnose the problem, they prescribe a solution, and you can do it yourself. You can go to a physical therapist or get some meds. Each of those have investments attached to them to get healthy. Same with camps. We're just going to do a deep dive and help you see what can be done. If you want to do it yourself, go do it. If you want us or Carl's team to do it, you get a 50% rebate basically from that growth action plan. So if y'all are interested in that growth action plan, just go to the improveandgrow.com website and click on the Let's Chat button. And you and Carl will have a conversation around how you can get some help in growing your camp. So thanks so much, Carl, for giving us such a great detailed overview. And that's what we like to do, folks. We like to give you systems and stories to inspire growth with your camps. So, as we wrap up, I just want to say something to you as a camp leader. Thank you. Thank you for creating these unforgettable, real life outdoor experiences for an anxious generation glued to their screens. What you do matters. And we want to help you reach more folks because we can't minister to empty beds. Before I go, also, if you like this, please subscribe and like and share the episodes. And if you want to help juice up the podcast, we actually have this really cool thing where you can go to a website and you can record a question, and then if we use that question, we'll let you know about it, and we'll do our best to answer that in a future episode. So just go to the growyourcamppodcast.com and click on the submit your topic button. So thanks so much for being with us, and we're grateful that you can join us. We're grateful for what you do. And Carl, thanks for the great, generous offer that you're making available to camps. So, on behalf of Carl and me and the Grow Your Camp podcast, let's grow camp together.